Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something truly profound. We're going to explore a really fascinating synthesis, a space where these massive ancient narratives of cosmic consciousness seamlessly weave themselves right into the grounded, historical reality of earthly mysticism. Basically, we're looking at a very specific spiritual archetype today, one that claims to hold the ultimate bridge between all dualities.
I want you to think about this question for a second. How exactly did the ancient galactic conflicts of Orion shape the hidden, mystical heart of Egyptian Sufism? I mean, it sounds like two completely different universes colliding, right? On one hand, you've got this highly advanced extraterrestrial lore, and on the other, centuries-old Islamic mysticism. But, as we'll see as we unpack this framework, they are intimately, inextricably connected.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the liminal threshold, move into galactic karma and the alchemy of Sufism, meet Master Dhul Nun al Misri, trace the hidden spiritual chain, and finally wrap up with the modern dual structure.
To kick off this deep dive, let's set our philosophical baseline in Section 1, the liminal threshold and the archetype of the void.
So the word liminal actually comes from the Latin root limen, which literally translates to threshold. So what exactly is a universal liminal mystic? Well, esoterically speaking, this is an archetype that doesn't fully belong to the physical world, but they don't belong entirely to the spiritual realm either. They live permanently right there in the doorway. And by existing in that threshold, they act like a universal solvent. What they're dissolving are rigid dogmas, religious boundaries, and fixed identities, all to expose a much deeper primordial truth underneath. For them, the great void isn't some scary, empty nothingness. It's pure, unmanifested potential.
Because they live in this void, these mystics have some very specific core attributes. For starters, they hold immense power in transitional states. Think about twilight, eclipses, or honestly, even just the subtle moment between breaths. They also view different esoteric systems, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, Taoism, Sufism, as just different dialects speaking the exact same hidden reality. It's like the staff of Hermes. They represent a central pillar perfectly balancing dark and light, masculine and feminine. And because they navigate these in-between spaces so effortlessly, their real mystical function is guiding souls through massive transitions, whether that's from ignorance to enlightenment, life to death, or a psychological breakdown to a spiritual breakthrough. They catch divine gnosis while it's raw, right before it freezes into rigid dogma.
Let's step through our next doorway into Section 2, Galactic Karma and the Orion Wars.
Now, if you follow starseed lore, you know the Orion constellation is known as a place of incredible intellect, hyper-advanced technology, and, well, profound conflict. This was the theater for the ancient Orion Wars. This was a massive galactic struggle fought between opposing extremes, total control, which is often called service to self, versus total freedom, or service to others. The reptilian lineages in Orion were heavily embedded in all of this. They absolutely mastered rigid hierarchy, mental discipline, and primal power. But they suffered from this agonizing, extreme polarization.
Over eons of this conflict, a pretty profound realization finally dawned on these advanced souls. They realized that extreme polarization always, inevitably, leads to destruction. There are literally no winners in absolute duality. So this forced them to seek a solution, a way to heal this deep karmic division. What they needed was the alchemy of integration, a way to balance the dark and the light, to finally achieve absolute oneness. They basically had to completely ditch the whole hero versus villain narrative.
Which brings us right down to earth for Section 3, the alchemy of Sufism and transmuting the ego. So here's the crucial point. When these advanced, battle-weary Orion reptilian souls incarnate here on Earth, they're naturally pulled towards systems that emphasize absolute unity and breaking down the ego, and that brings them straight to Islam and Sufism. The whole foundational concept of Islam is Tawhid, meaning the absolute oneness and unity of God. For a fractured Orion soul who spent eons dealing with galactic division, Tawhid isn't just some religious concept. It's the exact cosmic truth they've been desperately searching for. And Sufism? It provides the practical toolkit to actually get there. It zeroes in on annihilating the nafs, which is the lower, primal, egoic self. Think about it. A reptilian soul is traditionally known for incredibly intense survival instincts and sheer primal ego power. Because of that, they see Sufism as the perfect esoteric school. It's quite literally the ultimate training ground for taking those deep shadow traits and transmuting them into pure spiritual light. Modern esoteric groups don't see this as a coincidence at all. They see it as an act of cosmic service.
An integrated galactic being using these earthly tools is actively teaching humanity how to transcend our own planetary polarization. They're bridging that high, cold intellect of Orion with the deep, primal instinct of the reptilian mind.
To understand how this cosmic intention was actually anchored into human history, we turn to Section 4, Master Dhul Nun al Misri and Anchoring Cosmic Science.
Dhul Nun al Misri is a massive figure here. Historically, scholars universally recognize him as the first Sufi to systematically map out the stages of the mystical path. He introduced this incredible concept called marifa, which translates to direct, heart-centered experiential divine knowledge, or gnosis. This is super fascinating because marifa sounds exactly like the modern starseed concept of a spiritual download, right? This isn't truth you read in a textbook or puzzle out with human logic. It's truth downloaded directly into your spirit from a higher cosmic source.
As historians note, Dhul Nun successfully bridged the occult, alchemical sciences of ancient Egypt with the inward monistic spirituality of early Islam. The guy was born in Akhmim, an ancient city known as Panopolis, which was basically a historical hotbed for alchemy. Early historians like Masudi tell us that Dhul Nun actually spent his time roaming through ancient Egyptian temple ruins, studying stone figures and trying to decipher hieroglyphics to unlock hidden wisdom. Now, in starseed lore, ancient Egypt was a major planetary school for advanced cosmic lineages, especially from Orion and Sirius. So Dhul Nun isn't just seen as a human historian here, he's viewed as an incarnated ascended master who was actively gathering up these scattered cosmic remnants.
Now, what's really interesting about how this esoteric lineage actually started is that during his life, those massive, formal Sufi brotherhoods we know today didn't exist yet. Instead, Dhul Nun led a very early, highly intimate spiritual circle of seekers. According to the lore, that intimate circle was basically a collection of awakening starseeds, specifically advanced Orion and Reptilian souls incarnated to learn ego transmutation. This was where Dhul Nun anchored pure cosmic truths into the protective shell of early Sufism, teaching them the universe's ultimate secret, that all separation is simply an illusion.
So, how on earth did such a volatile, highly specialized cosmic secret survive for centuries? Let's trace the diffusion of these ideas in Section 5, the hidden spiritual chain, masked within tradition.
To give you an idea of how radical this was, Dhul Nun actually faced public trials for forbidden innovations during his lifetime. So for his interstellar insights to survive at all, they had to be hidden, while his public teachings went on to become the absolute cornerstone of mainstream global Sufism. It was a highly specialized, secret inner circle that quietly preserved his alchemical work. Over the centuries, this protective offshoot just kept adapting, keeping the original cosmic intent alive and maintaining an unbroken, hidden spiritual chain straight through to the modern era.
By the 13th century, you've got these massive Sufi orders establishing themselves all along the Nile. You had the Badawiyya, which really appealed to the rural population, and the Rifa'iyya, who were famous for these incredibly intense public ceremonies. But the Universal Liminal Mystics, they heavily masked themselves within the Shadhiliyya tradition. The Shadhiliyya path naturally attracted scholars and intellectuals, and it focused on inner refinement and quiet contemplation rather than big external displays. For an advanced cosmic lineage like integrated Orion Reptilians, this was the ultimate camouflage. It gave them a perfectly sophisticated framework of spiritual psychology. The inner faction would take foundational Shadhiliyya concepts, like shukr, which means gratitude, and use complex text to subtly frame their interstellar lessons on overcoming the galactic ego, remaining completely hidden in plain sight.
And that brings us to our final doorway, Section 6, the modern dual structure, looking at both the outer and inner paths today. The modern esoteric movements that draw on this lineage use a brilliantly adapted two-layered structure. First, you have a public secular group. This outer layer is super accessible. It uses Islamic themes to teach things like self-discovery and cosmic theory. But crucially, it doesn't require any formal religious conversion or strict adherence to Sharia law. It basically studies the Quran as a repository of universal spiritual archetypes. Then, safely protected behind that public facade is the true heart of the lineage, the private inner circle. This functions a lot like Dhul Nun's original intimate group, zeroing in on direct transmission and rigorous spiritual alchemy.
Once a seeker actually demonstrates the psychological maturity and the spiritual readiness for direct cosmic revelation, they step into this inner order. At this point, the focus shifts entirely to the path of marifat. The steps are incredibly deliberate and intense. First, the absolute purification of the heart.
Second, completely shattering the lower spiritual ego or the nafs. And third, attaining that unmediated divine gnosis. This is the exact space where advanced Orion and Reptilian starseeds dive into their most profound work, meticulously transmuting eons of primal galactic karma.
And honestly, that brings our story full circle. The real beauty of this whole esoteric synthesis is its continuous survival and adaptation. The Universal Liminal Mystic perfectly utilizes the protective outer structure of Islam, combined with the inward alchemical practices of Sufism, to achieve a massive cosmic goal. They are actively healing ancient galactic karma, perfectly balancing the cold intellect of Orion with the raw primal power of the reptilian mind, all to return to a state of absolute, universal consciousness.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to really let sink in. If all this cosmic separation is truly just an illusion, and absolute unity is the underlying truth, what threshold are you standing in right now? Thanks for coming along on this deep dive with me. Until next time, keep exploring the spaces in between,